Taking a safari in today's Australia would reward you with some incredible animals not found anywhere else on the planet. Driving around the driest inhabited continent on Earth, you would be able to enjoy croc-watching tours and observe the likes of kangaroos, koalas, emus, and cassowaries. But what if we were able to take a step back in time to the Pleistocene era? Spanning from 2.5 million years ago to 11,700 years ago, Australia was a different place, with some even more unusual inhabitants. Let's take a look and see what we could expect to see on a safari in Pleistocene Australia. As we jump in our 4x4 vehicle and head off on our safari across Pleistocene Australia, we keep our eyes peeled. Australia is already in the geographical position it is in today. The flora and fauna are remarkably similar to today, but there are plenty of surprises along our journey. We turn the vehicle towards a distant woodland where we hope to see some animals. As we enter the trees, the driver brings the 4x4 to a halt. He spotted something. In the scruffy bush, there is some movement. A bristly-looking body emerges from near the ground. It looks like it's completely covered in spines. It's a bit like a hedgehog. We soon realize that this is no hedgehog. Instead, it's an echidna. These egg-laying mammals are common throughout Australia in modern times. But this one is different. It looks very similar to today's short-beaked echidna, but it is enormous. Our guide informs us that during our Pleistocene safari, we are likely to find what was known as the megafauna animals that were significantly larger than today's species. This echidna is called the Hackett's giant echidna and measures 1 meter or 3.3 feet long and can weigh up to 30 kilograms or 66 pounds. We can see that she looks anxious and agitated. She dives under her underground burrow and comes out with her newborn baby. It's called a puggle and is completely spineless and defenseless. She then scurries off into the woodland, taking her puggle with her. When we look around to try and find out the reason for her fleeing, we see an enormous snake. It must be at least 6 meters or 20 feet long. It's called Wanambi, and rather than being venomous, it is a constrictor, similar to pythons. It is also an ambush predator, but it has been detected by the giant echidna. The game is up. Or is it? The snake is too large to sneak down the echidna's burrow, like modern-day snakes. Maybe the echidna and her young weren't the target of this large snake. We watch in silence as the snake slithers along the ground. It moves towards a large watering hole. There, it lies in wait. We move the vehicle closer, watching and waiting. The snake is hoping to ambush something. Just then, an animal moves towards the water. It's a kangaroo, although nothing like we have ever seen before. This is a kangaroo of giant proportions. It must be standing at least 2 meters or 6.6 feet tall. It has a shorter face than today's kangaroos and 2 extra long fingers on each of its front feet. Its name is Pradon, and it is the largest kangaroo ever to have existed. We watch as it pulls branches down from the trees with its long fingers and nibbles at the leaves. Then, slowly, it makes its way to the water to drink. It's now dangerously close to the lurking Wanambi snake. But as it lowers its head to drink, something spooks it. The giant kangaroo pricks its ears and sniffs the air. It then takes off into the undergrowth. We are surprised to see it walking, more like a human rather than hopping like modern-day kangaroos. But weighing up to 240 kilograms or 530 pounds, the tendons in the back legs simply wouldn't be able to cope with that sort of locomotion. There would be too much stress and strain caused by hopping. Out of the woodland comes an enormous creature. It's not like anything we've seen before. It has a snout a bit like a hippo and a body like a rhino, with huge muscular shoulders. We sit in silence as it ambles out of the tree line. Now in full view, we can see just how enormous it is. Standing at 1.8 meters or 5 feet 11 inches at the shoulder and measuring 3.4 meters or 11 feet from head to tail, we are informed that it is the Pradon, the largest marsupial ever to have existed. It looks like a giant wombat. Being so large, this animal has shaped the landscape in which it lives, much like modern-day elephants. It feeds on trees, grasses, and shrubs, consuming vast quantities to fuel its body. It is too large for the Wanambi snake to take down, and so the snake gives up and slithers away. But the danger isn't over for the Pradon. As it gulps down water from the watering hole, a marsupial lion is closing in. Similar in weight to today's African lionesses, the marsupial lion stalks through the undergrowth, its belly close to the ground. It's been searching for a meal, and now it has found one. But the Pradon looks too big for the lion to take down. They are more suited to tackling the juveniles. As it lunges forward from the undergrowth, the Pradon turns at the last second. There is a face-off, and we don't know who is going to come out on top. A moment later, the marsupial lion scarpers. Perhaps it realized that it wouldn't be able to subdue such large prey. But then, we see another predator is approaching. One that is truly terrifying, and one that the Pradon is no match for. The Pradon backs away nervously as a scaly head pokes out from the trees. It sways gently from side to side as it moves forward. The head belongs to some kind of reptile, a giant reptile. And although saltwater crocodiles existed during the Pleistocene and made for formidable predators, this animal is even larger than a salty. It reminds us of a giant Komodo dragon. But even this enormous lizard would dwarf today's Komodo dragons. Its name is Megalania and is the largest terrestrial lizard known to have existed. It likely competed with marsupial lions for prey. When it comes into full view, we can see that it is 7 meters, or 23 feet long, and estimated to weigh almost 2,000 kilograms, or 4,400 pounds. Once it is within a few yards of the Pradon, it suddenly lunges forwards. It catches the giant marsupial in its jaws, and we hear an ear-splitting shriek from the Pradon as it struggles to break free. There is a brutal tussle between mammal and reptile, but we can see the Pradon growing weaker as the seconds pass. We can't tell if the Megalania has venom glands inside its mouth. It doesn't take long for the Pradon to succumb to the attack, allowing the lizard to tuck into its meal. We suspect that venom helped in subduing the prey, mostly by acting as an anticoagulant, increasing blood loss, and rapidly reducing blood pressure just like the venom of Komodo dragons. If the Megalania did secrete venom, then it would make it the largest venomous vertebrate ever known. We watch for a few minutes as the lizard tears meat from the bone and then heads off. As we travel back into the open, we see a flock of large birds walking along the ground. We are familiar with the large flightless birds that are endemic to Australia in modern times, such as the emu and cassowary, and these birds are similar in size. They look a bit like ostriches and are now called Newton's thunderbirds. Although they are an impressive sight, they are not as big as the earlier thunderbirds that once graced the Australian outback. We carry on driving past, viewing all sorts of wildlife that looks remarkably familiar. There are different species of kangaroos, all different shapes and sizes. Even scuttling along the riverbank we drive along, we see a platypus. It is slightly larger than today's duck-billed platypus, but other than size, is very similar. It is sad to think many of these animals no longer exist, but of course, some of their relatives managed to make it past the end of the Pleistocene and survive the influx of man. Up in one of the trees, clinging to the trunk, we spot a koala bear. We've never seen one before, but our guide informs us that this is about 1/3 larger than modern-day koalas. It is known as the giant koala and spends most of its time in the trees, but soon will become extinct, like much of the Australian megafauna. As our safari draws to a close, we see a sad sight. In the distance, trotting along the open grassland, is a Tasmanian tiger or Tasmanian wolf. This canid, similar to modern dogs or foxes, was alive until as recently as 1936, but we as humans never managed to conserve the species. It is incredible to see this iconic species. Once considered an apex predator just a short distance away, their demise would come later than the other members of the Australian megafauna, as dingoes, introduced by man, outcompeted them, and humans hunted them to extinction. Only a few lone specimens remained in zoos until the 20th century, until they too died. Of course, Australia is famed for many of its modern-day species like its crocodiles, monotremes, and marsupials. But having survived the Pleistocene megafaunal extinction, How much longer will these animals remain in Australia? That's all for today. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with your friends. You can also leave a comment with what you would like to see in the following videos. Thanks for watching. See you next time.